Dear students, good evening. Welcome to Law Excellence IAS. Let us have editorial analysis for today, that is 9th November 2022. The first article is a necessary signal. To explain this article, let me start with the story which I have read in Finshorts. In 1991, the tiny island nation of Vanuatu raised an important question: who pays for climate change? While everyone else at the time still kept debating about the true cause of climate change, this country could see the writing on the wall. They could see the water levels rise across the Pacific Ocean. They could see their livelihoods damaging, and they could see that it wasn't their fault at all. After all, they contribute just 0.0016% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. It was an issue precipitated by all the rich countries that guzzle fossil fuels. Now, when you listen to this, what you have felt. So, there is a big problem that is there before us that has to be solved. In this scenario, a necessary signal, what it talks about is COP26, it talked about carbon neutrality. It also spoke about afforestation or stopping the deforestation. But did we achieve something? No. Most of the times there is grand posturing by the countries, but little implementation follows that. Fundamental debates who has to pay for climate change is still not answered. Then who has to pay is one question, how much they have to pay and how they have to pay, who has to receive. These questions are still not been answered. Today, COP27 is occurring at Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt. In this COP27, the major issue they are going to talk about is loss and damages. Reparations for historical gaseous emissions, GHG emissions, who have to pay the reparations? That is the question before us. So COP27, that's why, is also called as an implementation COP. But remember that the COP obligations are not binding on the parties. The COP, that is Convention of Parties obligations, are not binding on the parties. And second, we delay this further, the damages are going to be huge, and the cost that is going to be incurred to secure the global future is going to be higher and higher. In these circumstances, we need to devise a transparent payment system on climate compensation to the developing countries, small island nations, underdeveloped countries. And also, the responsibility has to be taken up by the countries that have contributed for this. And second is, the existing carbon budget shall be effectively used for the countries which have got developmental needs. And the important thing is the life given by our Prime Minister. That is, environment, day-to-day lifestyle changes for environment. And what is most important thing in previous articles we said, that is equity is necessary. And we also have discussed that the carbon budget has exhausted already three-fourths, only one-fourth is left. This one-fourth have to be given for the countries which are in need rather than taken away by the countries which are responsible for the problem in the first place. If all this have to be implemented, there has to be a cost to this, and who has to bear this cost? There is some clarity necessary, and this cost is not going to come down, it is expected to increase further and further. So it is the time we need to make a particular decision. That is the essence of this article. Next is a clear picture of Agnipath's direction. Let us see this Agnipath scheme. We want to bring in young people into armed forces, modernize our armed forces, create theater commands. In these circumstances, this Agnipath scheme has come into existence. There was a lot of resentment and violence after the announcement of this program. We want to fill armed forces with young blood. In this case, what the Agnipath program is stating, every year 50,000 Agniveers will be recruited and 25% of them will be retained for next 15 years. The remaining people will go home after 4 years. In this case, what are the issues which we saw? The training period to induct these people for 4 years is very short. Close to, let us take 6 months. Can we make a best Jawan within this 4 to 6 months period of time? That is the first criticism. Second thing is, people will be coming and going. They are for a temporary stay. In these circumstances, will they develop esprit de corps, sense of nationalism, and collective objective? This is the second criticism. And third most criticism is, after serving for 4 years in army and when they leave, in those circumstances, what is the livelihood for them? What are the chances of lateral absorption of these people? These are the three issues which are being discussed. Objectives are good. We need young, motivated armed forces. And the second is, and we need to continuously keep them young, and we have to modernize them from time to time. But what about these challenges? In this case, on job training is going to be effective. Developed countries are already giving a basic training, and most of the training is happening on job. Second, the present day generation is tech savvy. So that's why they don't need detailed technical training. So if we show the path, they can take it forward. So like this article tries to support Agni in the view of modernization of Indian armed forces. The next article, content moderation through regulation. Simple thing, do we need to regulate our social media? We also saw IT intermediary guidelines and digital media ethics code. Intermediary guidelines and digital media ethics code. Here we have to balance three things. There are citizens who are making the content comments on social media. Their freedom of speech has to be respected. And second, intermediaries are there. These have a responsibility to ensure hate speech, anti-national comments do not come up. And third thing, state has a responsibility to protect our collective security. In this scenario, that is European Union has brought in an act which is called Digital Services Act, balancing intermediaries' role, government's role, and citizens' responsibilities. This can guide India's digital act which it is thinking of. As on today, IT Act is guiding entire digital environment in India. We do not have a separate law. We can inspire from Digital Services Act. What are the highlights of this Digital Services Act? Whenever government gives an order to take down content from intermediary, then it has to give reasons. The actions of the government have to be proportionate. If intermediary feels that government is not sound in its judgment or it has a grievance, then it shall be able to challenge the government. Third most important thing, the over regulation shall not cripple the startup ecosystem in the country or economic progress in the country. So that's why there has to be co-regulation. It means intermediaries will participate in the regulation along with the government. Because of this co-regulation, the standards will be revised regularly as per the changing environment. If you leave the regulation to the government alone, the government fails to revise the standards of regulation from time to time. So that's why what kind of regulation we have to bring in? Co-regulation. These are the 3 points you can add. So whenever you want to talk about plus one advantage, the Digital Services Act of European Union can be quoted as an example in respect of your answers. Next is, should the age of consent be reduced for adolescents? Remember clearly, when an young boy, adolescent boy, and an adolescent girl who do not have consent for relationship, if they are in love and go for certain sexual activity, then the parents of the girl, normally what they do is they file a case on that particular boy, and this boy will be arrested under very tough laws, that is POSCO Act, Prevention of Sexual Offences on Children, that particular act, and also Prevention of Child Marriages Act. Under these acts, these people will be arrested. So, for the teenage love, the consequences are going to be very cumbersome. Most of the times, these acts are being misused. In this case, can't we reduce the age of consent for sex? That is one way forward. And the second thing is, we can also do the age gap between the participants in the sex. Let us take it is 5 years or less. We can excuse them and we can consider that as consensual. So that is one criteria which we need to take into consideration. So we have to differentiate real cases from the frivolous cases. For that, if necessary, age of consent can be reduced for adolescents. The final article, no consensus or else is derailing counter-terror diplomacy. You know that Counter-Terrorism Committee of UN Security Council meeting is held in Bombay and Delhi, and no money for terror. This conference is also coming up in India. But why? The world is unable to fight against terror. Global war on terrorism is not successful as expected. Why? The reason goes like this. There is no clear definition of terror in India across the world. Now, the activity which is done in Yemen by the Houthi rebels is considered as a terror activity. The same thing has been done to kill a journal in Iran by Israel is not considered as a terror activity. So there are double standards in defining what constitutes terror. And second, the countries are not coming together to fight the terrorism for their own vested interests. You know, UN Security Council 1267 committee is there. India has referred many of the terrorists to be listed in that committee under 1267 committee. China has always blocked that. And third thing is, a terrorist to one nation is a freedom fighter to the other nation. The countries have their own geographic, geopolitical interests in that. India is pushing for a comprehensive convention on international terrorism, and this comprehensive convention did not move forward. Is the future going to be bright? The emerging technologies are going to make this thing much worse. The cost of terror is coming down, anonymity of the terror groups is increasing, and technology is making it much impactful. So, cost of terror is coming down. The people can remain anonymous. The fear of doing a terror activity is no more existing. And finances are becoming much liberal and easy. So in this scenario, how it is going to affect cryptocurrencies? They made the terror financing much easier. Social media with encrypted messaging, end-to-end encryption, they have made the terror communication much easier. Artificial intelligence and robotic soldiers, they can reduce the human loss or the people who are involved in the terror. And finally, we have seen the suspicion raised on China during COVID-19. One of the suspicion is this biological warfare related thing. Our existing viruses, gain of function research is going on. All these have to be addressed. So these are all the fears which we have. So in this context, the world has to get itself ready to get the definition of terror corrected. That is the need of the hour. That is the importance of this article. These are the articles for today. Thank you very much. And I'm there in Bangalore till tomorrow evening. Whoever wants to meet me tomorrow, I will be available in the office from morning 8 o'clock to evening 7 p.m. You can come and meet me over here. Thank you very much.